Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham here. It's a Sunday night as I'm recording, and we've got the short turnaround for Virginia Tech. And man, I have so much that we wrote about, reported on from yesterday's Virginia win 49-47 over Wake Forest. And we'll probably have to skim over that to get into this short time frame here. It's really tough. And then, of course, we have Monday's game and then not another game till next Saturday. Plenty of time then to both break down Virginia Tech, get ready for North Carolina. I guess we'll focus. Maybe we should start with let's start with yesterday's win. There was so much going on there. 5 observations first from Virginia's first to 49 win. My wife said she was sitting up in the upper deck of JPJ yesterday and talking with the people sitting around her. Does the first to 50 win this game? Nobody got to 50, as it turns out. What's funny about this game is that, just a week ago, Virginia won a game 80-76 at Florida State. And what I've noticed is the score of games, these are two dramatic differences, 80 points in a win, 49 points in a win. But the dramatic difference can be, at least in part, a result of the way the games are officiated. Just 24 fouls called yesterday in the game. And there were 41 called in the Florida State game last week. Um, you know, Tony Bennett got a technical foul, his first technical foul in 14 years, and it was over frustration at the lack of calls. Wake Forest, give them credit. Their defensive approach was based on the way the game was being called early, grabbing and clutching Virginia's cutters, the guards who run through the mover blocker sides offense, the way the offense is set up. The two bigs generally are setting screens on either side of the lane, and guards are running around either around or just circles around the guys, trying to get freed up on screens. If the defense is being allowed to grab and clutch, grab shirts, grab armpits, grab everything they can grab onto, and impede the flow of the cutters, there's not much Virginia can do offensively. It's really hard to change that up. Tony Bennett likes to run something that you see called sometimes middle third triangle offense, that basically sets up the screen in the middle of the floor, and there's a lot of action there, but it's still a screen based offense. And I mean, most offense in basketball is screen based, either that or ISO, right? And if defenses are allowed to clutch the guys cutting, trying to cut, there's not much that can be done. Yesterday's game was reminiscent of 1990s Detroit Pistons / New York Knicks NBA basketball. And the NBA legislated that kind of basketball out. The NCAA still allows it from time to time, and yesterday was one of those times. Um, so Virginia gets the win. Didn't get to 50 in either game against Wake Forest this year. Lost the first one 66-47 down in Winston-Salem. But the two games played very differently, even though the Virginia scored in the same range. Hunter Salas had 21 points in the win down in Winston-Salem for Wake Forest last month. He had 12 points yesterday. Kevin Miller, the point guard, a 14.7 assists in the win, 9 points, 2 assists, 4 turnovers in the loss. Andrew Carr, the power forward, he had 12 points and 12 rebounds in the win, 4 points, 8 rebounds in the loss. Wake as a team, 50% from the field, 10 of 21 from three in the win, 34.5% yesterday from the field, 5 of 21 in the loss. Defense was the big difference. Also rebounding. Wake Forest 40-27 advantage in rebounding in the win, a 38-36 advantage yesterday in the loss, and offensive rebounding was even 10 apiece. Reese Beekman, I wrote that he's Malcolm Brogdoning now in his last 6 games now, averaging 18.5 points, 5.2 assists per game, 47.9% shooting, 36.8% shooting from three. This from a guy that, won the season is averaging over 14 points and 6 assists per game, but he's really taken his team on his back offensively the last few games. And yesterday in the second half, when this game was very much in the balance, he had 14 points on 6 of 9 shooting, 14 of Virginia's 28 points in the second half, and he was the big guy. I noted in the column that I wrote last night, that I don't get a vote in these things. They only let the important people vote. But if I did have a vote, he's my ACC Player of the Year because of what he's meant to this Virginia team. And then there's Ryan Dunn. I wrote that the two numbskulls who sit next to me at the games, and they know who they are, Scott German and Jerry Ratcliffe. They were having a running commentary yesterday about how they can't figure out how Ryan Dunn is a projected number of a first round draft pick in the 2024 NBA draft. They must not have been paying attention to any of the 7 blocks that Ryan Dunn had in this game. Now, yes, his offense, he had 6 points on 3 of 8 shooting. He can't buy a free throw at this point, but he had the 7 blocks. He had 9 rebounds. He was a big reason that Wake Forest had all those the shooting woes. Those guys had off nights, off days. Game was played during the daytime. Um, I've said this to a few people. I've written this in email responses to a few people. You don't just get drafted into the NBA and play in the NBA because you score 25 points a game and light it up on the offensive end. There's plenty of guys who are just there for defense. Some Virginia fans should know this. Virginia observers should know this. DeAndre Hunter scored, certainly was a better offensive player, a more finished product after his third year at UVA, second year as a player. He redshirted 1 year. And was number 4 pick in the draft. He scored 15 and a half points a game as a redshirt sophomore in 2019. But he was primarily drafted because of his defensive abilities. Kawhi Leonard, I need to look these numbers up, but Kawhi Leonard, who's become a much better offensive player, certainly, and a franchise type player. But when he was originally drafted, was he out of San Diego State? I think it was. He was primarily a defensive player, and was so good defensively that he was a key part of those San Antonio teams, the late Tim Duncan era San Antonio teams. We go way back to Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman was not a guy who could make much of anything on the offensive end, but he was out there because of defense and rebounding. You need guys like that on every team, and Ryan would probably be more valuable, and certainly would be more valuable, I think, to a team that's already got scorers at other positions. But you don't put a team of 5 scorers out on the floor anyway. Everybody, Draymond Green, Golden State would be another comparison for Ryan Dunn. So that's the kind of game he had yesterday. It's the kind of game he brings to Virginia. And I'm not saying that I want him to be a first round pick this year. I think he could come back and maybe polish a little bit of his offensive game. Maybe have a DeAndre Hunter like revelation between his sophomore and junior years in college, and make himself an even more valuable player to the NBA with a year of work at the college level, and make him be more valuable to himself. I'm seeing him projected anywhere from, I think, 17 to end of first round. DeAndre was a number 4 pick. You get a lot. I mean, the way the NBA salary scale is for first round picks, there's a big difference between top of the first round and middle and then bottom of the first round. And it's not just for the first year; it's for the first 5 years of your career. So, but he's clearly an NBA talent. It's just he's got to develop on the offensive side. Another offensively challenged guy who had a big impact yesterday, Jordan Minor for Virginia, did not score in the game. He missed his only shot from the floor. He was 0 for 2 from the line. That was an issue. But he had 4 rebounds in 19 minutes. Also blocked a shot, and his +6 ± was second on the team to Dunn's +11. The two defensive guys on this team had the best games from a plus-minus standpoint. The free throw shooting was what it was. I don't know that I've not seen this anywhere. I do not have access to the Elias Sports Bureau. Not even sure if they do work in college basketball, but the Elias Sports Bureau is something we talk about in baseball all the time. I would love someone to go through the records of every college basketball game and see if a team has ever won a game shooting 1 for 11 or comparable from the foul line. Virginia made 1 of 11 from the line, and it should have been. I mean, it could have been worse. I've always advocated for, if you missed the front end of a 1-and-1, that should count as 0 for 2. Virginia missed the front end of 2 1-and-1s in the last 38 seconds. Had a chance to put this one away several times. It came down to a last-second defensive stand to hold out and preserve the 49-47 win. But looking at the 1 of 11 from the line, I like to say this, and I was saying this on press row yesterday, even though as the time was running short. Your free throw shooting is often a function of who's shooting the free throws. And so, factor that in. Yesterday you had Jordan Miner, who's a seasoned 60% shooter, shooting 3 of the 11 free throws. Ryan Dunn, who's a seasoned 56.1% free throw shooter. He shot 3 of the free throws. Blake Buchanan, a seasoned 56.4% shooter, 0 of 2. Now, Reese Beekman is a 75.3% shooter. He missed the front end of a 1-and-1. And then you had Isaac McNeely, who coming into the game was 89.5% from the line. He missed the first of a two-shot foul, made the second. He made the free throw, the one free throw Virginia made in the game. Um, so I did some math, and of course, this is math. This isn't necessarily, obviously, it's not going to be a reflection of uh, exactly how free throws are made or not. But if you just do the probabilities of, Jordan Miner, for example, being 0 for 3, he's a 60% foul shooter. Expected makes for him would be 1.8 out of those three, right? So I did the math on this, and I came up to Virginia should, instead of being 1 of 11, should have been 9 of 13 from the line. That's 8 points. Virginia won by 2. This game should have been a 10-point win for Virginia. If you just shoot 69.2% from the line, I'm not saying shoot 13 of 13. 9 of 13 is not going to win you any free throw shooting contest. Just do what you can do there, and you're going to, win the game without having to get a stop on a play where Wake could have either tied it with a 2 or won it with a 3 at the buzzer. So um, that's the way things go in college basketball. The impact next up here, I'll talk about the impact on the metrics, and I'll bring it up in relation to the rest of the ACC as well, because we're getting close now. It's hard to hold off. I've got all these plans in place all season long, but metrics don't mean much to me. I know Joe Lunardi will come out with his first bracketology for next year the day after the national championship game, which to me is absolutely ridiculous. It's ridiculous to even talk bracketology to me until February, but here we are. Middle of February. It's actually the second half of February now. Virginia with the win, improved slightly in the computers. The average rank after the loss to Pitt on Monday was 37.2 in the 6 metrics that the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee uses to help it seed a field, produce and then seed a field. 37.2 would factor into about a 9 or a 10 seed in the NCAA tournament if you're seeding based on the computers. The rank after yesterday's win improved 2.5 spots up to 34.7. So all of a sudden you're talking about pretty solid 9 seed. And I'm seeing, the ESPN, not Joe Lunardi himself, but their other guy who does bracket writing, says Virginia is a solid 8 seed. So, hey, we're in that area code, let's just say. Looking across the ACC, the it's weird to me to say that Clemson is one of the 3 locks. I'm not buying Clemson as a lock, but the ESPN, a couple of the 2 ESPN renderings of the bracket have Clemson as a lock, as a 7 seed right now. UNC is a 2 or a 3 seed. Duke is probably right now a 3 seed. Then Virginia as an 8 or a 9. I'm saying 9. The ESPN folks are saying 8. Wake Forest and Pitt are the other 2 getting long looks. Wake Forest, based just on the computer averages, would be either one of the last 4 in or first 4 out. So I've got them as 11 or bubble. Pitt is interesting. Pitt with another win yesterday. It was over Louisville, so that's not going to prove your numbers very much, but that's short term. But their average rating right now is 50.1. That doesn't you don't see a lot of teams with an average rating of computers at 50.1 getting an at-large bid. So at 17 and 8, 8 and 6 in the ACC, 7 wins in their last 8, including road wins at Duke and at Virginia, and they're outside looking in. It's hard, but right now they'd be outside looking in. I, you know, I would personally, if computers say one thing, eye test says another. And right now, the eye test to me, I mean, Wake obviously played Virginia great yesterday, but came up short. Pitt is hot right now. I know there's still a couple weeks to go in the regular season. Then we got the ACC tournament. Plenty of opportunities for both those schools to improve their standing. Um, you know, I'd like to think that the ACC gets 6. This is a good conference. I did some math on this. So I'll go ahead and talk about this. I wasn't necessarily planning to get into this, but when I looked at the macro level, because there were some comments from both Coach Tony Bennett at UVA and then Steve Forbes at Wake Forest talking about how silly things are right now in the discussion. When I did some math on this, and it takes a while to do this. This is why it's late in the day on Sunday when I'm finally getting to recording this podcast. We're less than 24 hours from the tip tomorrow night, and I like to have this podcast out sooner. But I'm just comparing the Big 12 and the ACC. The Big 12, according to the experts, um, has 5 locks and 4 should-be-ins. 9 teams out of its 14 in the Big 12 that would be in the NCAA tournament field right now, while the ACC has 3 locks, 1 should-be-in, and 2 work-to-dos. We just went over that list in the ACC. A big reason for this is just how the relative conferences and then thus their members rank in the computers. And the way the rank in the computers works is, I mean, it's 3 of the computers are predictive measures, and then 3 are results based measures, and they all go on things like strength of schedule and well, at least the all do that, and then the predictive ones also then factor in we'll factor in some factor of score of those games. The results based won't factor the scores in so much. I'm curious as to how the ACC. So the ACC's record in non-conference games this year was 134-48. We won't play anymore until the NCAA tournament or the NIT for the teams that don't make the tournament. A 720 winning percentage. The Big 12 had an 810 winning percentage. So you'd say, well, gosh, just based on that, yeah, the Big 12 is a better conference. They had a better non-conference winning percentage. Then you look at the average. I did this. It took a while to do this. I looked up all the strength of schedule ranks for the 14 teams in the Big 12, the 15 teams in the ACC. Then I averaged them out, and it wasn't even close. The average non-conference strength of schedule in the Big 12, 211. There are 362 teams in Division One. They average 211. The ACC's average non-conference strength of schedule, 129. So the ACC had a 72% winning percentage against a much harder strength of schedule than the Big 12. But the Big 12 now, in the 3 areas where there are predictive measures, they played a bunch of cream puffs collectively. I mean, obviously there were some good games in there for individual schools, good tough matchups against individual schools. But in the games with cream puffs, they rolled up scores. And when you roll up scores in the predictive measures ones, doesn't matter that there's a factor of opponent strength and rolled into there. If you win a game by 40 points, you win a game by 40 points. So we'll call it gaming the system. And I headlined this particular column. The ACC needs to get off its dumb butt and realize, hey, stop scheduling tough. Tell your schools, stop scheduling tough non-conference games. Go 12-0 against a bunch of cream puffs. That's the way to do it. Virginia this year, for example, played a November tournament, lost a game to Wisconsin. What good did that do us, right? Because you don't get any credit for losing to Wisconsin. When you look at a Big 12 team playing a 300 plus NET ranked team and beating them by 40, you don't get credit for losing to Wisconsin in that game. You don't get credit for going to Memphis and losing that game. Play a bunch of cream puffs at home. That seems to be what works for the Big 12. And without having done the math, I'll assume it works for the other conferences too that are ahead of the ACC right now. All right, let's talk now real quick now, because I don't want to keep you here too long. Virginia Tech. Tomorrow night, Big Monday, 7 o'clock on ESPN. Our second time this season playing Big Monday. Hey, advantage to both schools. We didn't have to travel very far. Virginia was at home yesterday, going to Blacksburg tomorrow. Virginia Tech was in Chapel Hill, which is just, an hour and a half down the road, if it's even that far. And then they get to be at home. So at least, no advantage, disadvantage there for either team from a travel standpoint. Let's see. That's a tough place to play. I say this all the time. I write this all the time in relation to Virginia Tech games in Blacksburg for Virginia fans. If you've never been to a game in Blacksburg, and if you've never been to a Virginia Tech game in Blacksburg, I mean, if you went to a Virginia Tech Campbell game in November It was the Castle Coliseum would seem like a mausoleum. Tech fans, that's it's a football school. I mean, from the sports standpoint, but they know to get up for three games. They don't get Duke and Carolina every year at home. They do get Virginia every year at home. And the place holds 89-25. A lot of nights there's not anywhere close to 89-25, but you can guarantee tomorrow night the weather is not bad in terms of the forecast. But if there was a foot of snow on the coming down tomorrow night, there'd be 89-25 there, and they'd all be hanging from the rafters. And that place is really tough. They don't sit the media down on the floor anymore, but back when they did, it really gave me it's been a few years since I've been there, but really gave me an education in how tough that place is to play. I happen to be seated on the end, where across from the Virginia bench, which is right underneath the student section. And that student section feels like it's like straight up from the basket. It's not, but it feels like it because it's just a wall of kids yelling and screaming. And it's not just during free throws, which yeah, the free throws are tough, but it's every you're playing offense in that end in the second half. And even in the years when Tech didn't, back a few years ago, didn't have good teams, and Virginia did have really good teams, these games will be tough for Virginia because of just that environment. This is a decent Tech team. I mean, I'm a little surprised. This Tech team to me is playing under where it should be right now at 14-11. Have lost four of their last five. Had a really good non-conference performance. I think they were 8-3 in non-conference, but they played a really tough schedule. Didn't do them any good. I think their non-conference strength of schedule was 37, if I remember from looking it up earlier today. Um, but now at 6-8 in the ACC, not really even close to the bubble for this Tech team as far as NCAA tournament's concerned, but still a good team, a dangerous team. You don't want to play them there, especially for Virginia. Um, Looking at this Tech team, we've already seen them once this year, so I'm repeating a lot if you've watched the previous. But it's still worth repeating. No one injured of the major players. Sean Padula and Hunter Couture are the heart of this team. Backcourt, 6'1" Padula, 15.5 points a game. He's a 39.9% shooter from the field. That number is down from where it was earlier this year. He's 35.2% from three. Couture is a really good shooter. He's a fifth-year senior, 14.3 points a game, 47.7% from the field, 42.7% from three. Padula had 18 points and five assists in the loss to Virginia back last month, but he also had seven turnovers and was just 6 of 16 from the floor. So he had to work an awful lot to put up 18 and five. Couture was relatively quiet for him, 12 points, 5 of 10 shooting. The guy that surprised me in terms of how quiet he was in the first game was Lynn Kidd. He's a guy who's been at Tech for a while. He's 6'10" senior, kind of one of those guys who gets better every year. He's averaging 12.9 points and 6.6 assists per game, shooting 64.3% from the field. In the first game, though, he had 2 points and two rebounds in 16 minutes. And those 16 minutes weren't foul prone or foul play minutes. He had one foul in 16 minutes. He got 16 minutes because he was ineffective. And Mike Young just benched him because of the ineffectiveness. And that ineffectiveness was Jordan Minor. That was Minor's second start. Virginia is now 9-2 in Minor starts. And so it's a team that's kind of grown up around a guy who averages 4 points a game, Jack Salt like in Minor's case. But it'll be interesting to see if what Tech does to try to involve Kidd more in the game plan tomorrow night. 6'7" sophomore Tyler Nickel, 9.2 points a game. He's a 43% shooter from three. Had a pretty quiet 8 points on 2 of 8 shooting in the first game. Robbie Barron is a 5.8 point per game scorer, 32.2% from three. He's a 6'9" guy, Northwestern transfer. He had a pretty good game the first time out, 10.6 rebounds, couple of threes. MJ Collins, 6.3 points a game, 24.6% from three. He hit a three early in that game. I remember telling the people on press row around me, a 20% foul or 3-point shooter just made a three-pointer. That was all he did, though. He played 34 minutes, had 3 points, 2 assists, a rebound, and a steal. I'm not sure what he does for this team. He'll probably hit an early three tomorrow night, and we'll all say, Chris said he doesn't do much. And then you'll look up at the end of the night, he probably won't have much on the scoreboard there. So how Virginia plays this one, you know, Tech has lost 4 or 5 overall, I noted, and I'm really confused as how this is. The big issue when you look in the numbers is on the defensive end. Tech ranks just 101st nationally in adjusted defensive efficiency. And in this recent rough stretch, one win in 5 games, the Hokies are surrendering an average of 80.8 points a game. And when you look at points per possession, it's even worse. 80.8 points and then 1.199 points per possession. That's like Gonzaga at its best offense level. I mean, that's an impressive number in a bad way. So the focus for Tony Bennett's staff is going to be trying to figure out what to do to make it harder for the backcourt guys, Padula and Couture. If you can make them work for their points, they're going to score points. We saw that in the first game. Even when they had rough nights, Padula and Couture combined for 30 points in the loss. Make them work for those points. And don't surrender too many open shots. Don't let them get hot. And then Jordan Minor on Lynn Kidd. Minor staying out of foul trouble will be key here. Ryan Dunn, if Dunn can help out there, both in post-to-post doubles perhaps on Kidd, and also then help out as a weak side defender if Padula particularly, because Couture is more of a three-point shooter. But if Padula gets in a lane, if Ryan Dunn can slough off just a little bit and help out with some weak side defense, that will really help slow down. You're not going to stop those guys, but slow down the guards. Beekman now, I want to point out, I think I did point out earlier in the podcast, but 18.5 points a game in those last 6 now, as far as that goes. Defensively on Padula will be a factor, but then what he can do offensively, he's really carrying this team on his back right now offensively. It'd be great if you got some help from Isaac McNeely, who had 29 in the win at Florida State last week, averaging 12.4 per game. In the first game in this matchup with Virginia Tech, he had just 8 points on 3 of 8 shooting. So would like to see much more of a night there from Isaac McNeely. Now, from a Vegas standpoint and a computer standpoint, the computers in Vegas both favor Virginia Tech slightly. I'm actually feeling pretty good about this matchup for Virginia just because Tech is struggling so much right now, especially on the defensive end. Virginia, if get rolling early in this game, not rolling, not hitting the first 10 shots from the game, the only way you can win this game necessarily, but just good offensive start, be in the game early, as much as possible, neutralize that crowd. I don't say take them out of the game because I don't think you're going to easily take this crowd out of the game. This is a Super Bowl type game for this Tech team, this Tech fan base. With a 14-11 record, Virginia Tech is not anywhere close to even having a great run down the stretch to play their way back into at-large bid consideration. And so, but that said, it's kind of like how we Virginia fans, when it's football season, it's kind of like, all right, we're not going to play in the national championship. We're not going to play in a playoff. We're not going to get a bowl game, but we'll make this our bowl game. Well, this is sort of a similar kind of environment for Virginia Tech basketball fans, and they play well there. They've lost 2 of their last 5 at home, but that's not with 89-25 hanging off the rafters, screaming for blood, that blood being orange and blue. So, game time tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Game was on ESPN. I will have the post-game coverage, probably have the first post-game story around 9:30 tomorrow night. And we'll do what we can do thereafter with the post-game interview with Coach Tony Bennett, my 5 observations column, and more. Also, look on the site. I won't go into great detail, but wrapped up the UVA baseball first weekend. It's hard to believe, but yes, college baseball's already played 3 games. I had a nice recap of today's game, but also the weekend for Virginia, a 3-game sweep of Hofstra. A recap and look at the Virginia women's basketball team today losing to number 19 Syracuse in a tight game down the stretch, 85-79. So look for that. And I guess that'll kind of wrap us up. Hey, if you have any questions for me, anything you want me to address in a future column, any tidbits, anything like that, please email me at chris@augustafreepress.com.